Talking about the second house and its relationship to your values, finding your voice, finding your tribe, and how those things come from your family and your childhood. So today I'm talking about the crucial and important piece in understanding childhood astrology, or awakening from your childhood programming, and it's the second house. The second house is the house of our childhood, and it's this way because it's related to our values and that environment, not just that we grew up in, but that you're in right now. Right now you're sitting in a room and there's a bunch of stuff around you. You have your possessions, your clothes, your, all the stuff that you've brought into your life. Now, again, it's very interesting because you'll often hear the second house has to do with money. Money. Well, what is money? Money is a value that we get from life that's given to us, and then we take the money that's given to us and go out and buy something with it to bring back to us to have around us. Like I'm standing here in this room and I see books, there's a camera in front of me, I see a bass guitar hanging on the wall over there, I see a little piece of art with chakras on it, I have books about astrology, I have all kinds of other stuff in this room. It's like music equipment, astrology stuff, media stuff, and you can look at my stuff and get a pretty good idea of what I value the most and what my values are, right? And that's really what that whole kind of box is related to our values. Now, these are the values I have now. But when I was born and raised, the family that I was born into had different set of values, right? The values I was raised in, I was born in very rural Maryland, in a city called Pasadena, Maryland, right on the Chesapeake Bay. Literally, the community that I grew up in has about 50 houses in it, spread out over, I don't know, I can't do acres, but maybe 5 square miles or something like that. And there were, woods, and the Chesapeake Bay was right there, and there was fishing and all this kind of stuff, hunting, very rural values. They were very out of sync with my values, but I was born into that situation, and I had to be raised in that situation. I didn't choose it. I didn't choose to be born there with those parents in that environment. But that environment formed my values, including the people around me, what I was taught, the way I was exposed to the world. And this is everyone's story. As I've been explaining these qualities of our childhood, I've started with the sort of premise that we didn't choose our childhood. It's like the culmination of our last lifetime, which has to do with the south node of Ketu. We are thrust into a situation that we didn't choose, and we're in that situation, and a lot of that gets buried. We don't remember the past lives. We don't remember a lot of our early childhood. And again, it's sort of the culmination of our last lifetime, and what we need to learn in this lifetime happens through Ketu, the situation that we're in. Then we have this mindset and this psychology and this sort of innocent nature of our mind, which is kind of a through line back into our childhood, which is connected to the moon, right? This is why even the stuff that happened to you when you were a little kid still feels like it was you. You remember how it felt. It's still that same identity that's moving through time with you, and you move through time through the moon, but that also includes into past lives and whatnot, because the moon is literally called the Jiva Atman, which goes with you from lifetime to lifetime. Every night when you go to sleep, that moon part of you goes into different realms, right? Then you come back into this realm and you're back here again. So again, you can go in and out of different states of consciousness and different lifetimes and different parts of this life through the moon. That's why that's related to the childhood. But then the second house is the part that shows literally like the circumstances. The houses bring things and they nail things into form. So you can really look at the qualities of the second house ruler, to see what were like the circumstances of the childhood, and what type of values were formed from the childhood, right? And again, what was like the prevailing sort of nature of the surroundings, and through the and the values of the family unit, because I was raised like everyone was raised in a unit that had values as well. Like in my case, there wasn't religion or anything like that. Nobody went to church or anything like that. It was kind of left alone. We didn't really get, sort of, have a lot of values pushed into us, which, for as far as I was concerned, that was really quite good. That was good for me. I wasn't taught to believe a certain thing, at least not overtly. I wasn't taught to be religious or anything like that. So I just kind of found my own way in that. And I was, underneath it all, kind of left alone to be creative and to explore things creatively. There was a lot of other stuff going on, which would be shown by the South Node, by K2 and whatnot. But as far as that second house and second house ruler, for me, it's the moon is the ruler. It goes into the fifth house. Again, a lot of creativity, a lot of, I was able to pursue the things I loved and my heart's desire. There was also a lot of other things, though. There was a lot of punishment. There was severity. There was a lot of solitude and intensity, because Saturn, for example, is aspecting that second house with exact degree, really hard aspect. So there was a lot of loneliness, isolation, punishment, a lot of punishment. That was a big part of the childhood. And by the way, you read everything. I also started the Saturn Dasha when I was young, so there was a lot of punishment that came. And so you feel, you can see those things by evaluating the second house ruler, and then you look and see how the person is going to develop and evolve their own values throughout their lifetime. Because again, we don't just live the values of our childhood. That's where we start. And we're on an evolutionary process where we are trying to develop our own values and develop our own voice and our own tribe and build our own family. Many people, it is literally their own family. They get married, they have their own kids, and they build their own family around their own values. That's often not congruent with the values they were raised in. Some of us don't get married and have kids, like I didn't, but the family or the tribe that I've built is, I'm looking to be surrounded by people that I would maybe call my tribe who share the same values. You don't look to have a tribe with people who are doing stuff you're not doing. They're not in your tribe. So evolving our values beyond the past is what the second house is about. And again, so we have to go back and look at how our values were formed and then see how those things evolve, to a higher level. Now again, one of the benefits of the childhood that I was born in is I had to spend a lot of time alone. It was very severe when you're a child because you don't understand, punishment or whatever, but it prepared me to be able to be alone. So I'm good at being alone, right? I like it. I got used to it. And that, again, that forms a core value of mine, right? And again, because I've evolved that and I've integrated what could be the difficult quality of it, and by the way, there are still some difficult qualities of it. I might cling to being alone a little too much because I'm very comfortable with that and reject complicating my life, right? This is very true, by the way, because I got used to being alone. That value was deeply inculcated, but it also can be something where it might be a little too much of it because I got used to it. But getting the most out of that and taking the blessings and the lessons from our childhood and turning it into great virtues where we're not just stuck in the negative quality of it is what we're trying to do. And of course, these things work within the context of our chart. When you're reading the whole chart, you're seeing what is the person's identity and how do they express them in their existing value set and whatnot. These are the things I'm going to be showing in the weekend course on childhood astrology. I'm going to be showing these things, illustrating how these things work. And that second house is really a big part of it because, again, it shows how it's not just the values that you were raised in, but even go back and look at your voice and how important it is to find your voice. Not the voice that was put in your head by all the things your parents told you. Oh, you're a good little girl. Be a good little girl. Daddy approves of you when you're nice and sweet. Mommy likes you when you're tough, or whatever it might be. The voices in your head, the things that you did to try to please the people around you, well, again, when you were a very young child, and then how we lost ourselves and our true identity in everyone else's voice, everyone else's interpretation. So much so that we don't know who we are anymore. We don't recognize who we are underneath everyone else's voice. So much of our life is trying to find our own voice and not just be, a sort of, being who is responding to everyone else's, identity. So a lot of this is second house. And again, it revolves around things like values. Again, this is why values and voice are so important as well. Finding your voice and voicing your values. Notice how things like, oh, by the way, it's also like the body part is the second house, or, the second house and values also has to do with this body part, the mouth, which has to do with what goes into our mouth, also what comes out of our mouth. And notice how when your values change, as you start to evolve and develop, what also changes is what goes into your mouth. What goes into your mouth and what comes out of your mouth becomes developed. When you're young and you don't know better and you don't know yourself, you might eat junk food, you might smoke, eat a lot of meat, eat fast food, like we all did. And what comes out of your mouth at that time too? There's often a lot of cussing, maybe lying, maybe just all kinds of, arguments or whatever it might be. As you get more refined in your tastes, again, taste, literally taste, also has to do with second house. That's why it has to do with things like your possessions and your what you surround yourself with, right? That's literally has to do with taste. Oh, you have good taste. You would judge that by looking at the things around someone. But it's literally also the taste. What you like to taste, what food you put in your mouth, and what's more important. And again, once your tastes change and you get a taste for things that are more, wholesome and healthy and clean, then what comes out of your mouth also is clean and more refined. And of course, we're not just talking about food, we're talking about knowledge, wisdom, and the evolution of our values. Now again, this is a very important part of our development, that second house. That second house also connects to the 10th house of our work and our impact and our career. It's one of the Arta houses. It's our personal values, our personal Arta. We take that personal Arta and those personal values, and we want them to have impact on the world through our work and our career. That's our larger, what might be called Swadharma, or the impact of our values on the world. So again, these are also threads that I'm going to be touching on when I get into the Childhood Astrology weekend, but the main house that shows our childhood and the development of our values from childhood to adulthood, where instead of just being stuck in the past and still being stuck on the triggers and the old chains that were and the voices that were put into our head, we evolve beyond them. This is the second house. Thinking about this, I reflected on both of my parents who are no longer with us. They both died a few years ago, and I remember one of the last conversations I had with my mother. She was almost 70 years old, and she was upset about an interaction that she had just had with her mother and her sister. And she was saying things like, I just had, Mama's, she used to call her mother Mama. She was like, I don't know, Sam, she used to call me Sammy. Sammy, Mama is upset with me again. And then she mentioned another one of her sisters, always makes Mama mad at her. And, I've always been a good daughter. I don't know. And it's just hearing my 70-year-old mother still trying to get her mother's approval. Still stuck in the definition of her as being the daughter of this other person. Now again, it doesn't mean we're not supposed to honor our parents or that we don't care about those things, but it was it was still being lost in that version of who she is, and still kind of being a child, still totally diverted by what her mother might have said about her, and not knowing who she is underneath all of that in that context. My father had a similar kind of thing where he was always angry at his father, who had, last conversations I had with my father, his father, which would be my grandfather, had been dead maybe 10 years. This is almost a 70-year-old man, still angry and hurt at what his father did to him 60, 70 years earlier. And it's not an unusual, it's not a, unlikely story. I do readings all the time with people, and I'm still talking to someone who is still on some level in their mind trying to figure out who they are, and I hear all these voices in their head saying, no, you can't do that, no, you can't do that, oh, you're just this way, oh, you're just that way. And I'll often ask them, whose voice is that? Because I'll ask them, well, what do you want to do? What is it that you want to do? I see that you have all this talent. I see that you have all of this. And I'll go, oh yeah, I've always done this and I've always done that. And I'm like, great. I'll say, great, well, this is a great time for you to be doing that. Then a voice will come out of their mouth that says, well, but you can't do this, well, you can't do that. And then I'll say, well, whose voice is that I'm hearing now? A minute ago, I was hearing your voice, the one who really loves this thing, the one who's always writing poetry or doing this. A minute ago, I heard that person. Now, when you think about doing something with it, or pursuing more of that, or doing more of that, now I hear this sort of killjoy raining on the parade. Whose voice is that? Doesn't sound like yours. That sounds like the voice of the disapproving parent who said, don't do this, for maybe good reasons, because they're trying to protect you from getting your feelings hurt, or building up your hopes, or whatever it might be. But all this, when I mean finding your voice, that's what I mean. And again, it's not some kind of childish rebellion against people, because this is often what we wind up doing as well. When we wind up rebelling in some childish way, having some childish tantrum against the oppressor on some level. And when we do this as adults, even when we do it in our relationships, we bring this relationship we have with our parents into our relationships that we have with everybody, and we'll project and have again, some sort of childish tantrum against somebody, other people who we think are oppressing us into adulthood, and we're still just being triggered by stuff that happened when we were like 6 years old or something that we've never worked through. This is all second house. Not all, but it's mostly second house. Influences on the second house ruler, trying to work through and develop and evolve this function in our mind and in our life. It has to, so again, second house is about values. That's a big subject, but it includes our voice, what goes into our mouth, what comes out of our mouth, finding our tribe, connecting with the people that reinforce that, not just the family that you inherited, but the family that you create, right? So again, if you're interested in learning more about this, there is a course on childhood astrology where I talk about this subject of the second house. There's also the other main factor is the moon, which really connects us emotionally to all of that evolving consciousness, not just in this lifetime, but even into the past. Also Ketu, that part of us that was just where we just found ourselves in these circumstances, and we get a lot of deep skills that we developed through our childhood, but it was also very confusing, and we're not sure how to bring out that power from our childhood. So we'll talk a lot about that in the course as well. And there's also some other things I'm going to hit on: Saturn squares, different waypoints along our evolutionary process will also be talked about. So it'll be a deep immersion. If you can't attend in real time, there's recordings available and whatnot, but this is going to be very helpful. We're all trying to understand our childhood a little bit better and our family, and it's really there to help us heal and make peace with those people as well. I say those people with all due respect, because we also tend to exalt them and put them too much on a pedestal. You were my father, you were supposed to be perfect, or, oh no, they're just people. They're people, we're people. Diffusing all of the charge around this is also very important. and I'm sure you'll get a lot of perspective and insight. So hope to see you there at the class, and you take care.